This is it guys, the all-new 2020 Nissan Almera Turbo for Malaysia. In this video, we're going to take a look at all three variants available for the Malaysian market, what the differences are, and we're also going to take a quick drive to see our first impressions of this brand new B-segment sedan model, fresh for the market. Let's take a good look. This is an all-new model compared to the old car, which obviously you would know because it looks completely nothing like that old Almera that you know. So everything you see here is pretty much brand new, and in terms of dimensions, it is a much bigger car than before. This car is now 70mm longer than before, it's 45mm wider, and it's also 40mm lower to the ground compared to the old car. So while the old car looked a little bit, narrow, a little bit tall, a little bit awkward, this looks like a much nicer, much more sporty looking sedan. There are quite a few surprises with this one, but I'll start with safety first, because this car comes as standard with AEB across all three variants. This is an unprecedented move for a B-segment sedan like this, and I think it's absolutely brilliant that AEB is now standard across the range. That is how it should be. Safety should not be an option, any car, any price. Secondly, this car has a brand new 1-litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine under the hood. This is a pretty high-tech one. It has an electronic wastegate for reduced turbo lag, and inside the engine this uses something called mirror bore coating, which is something taken directly from the Nissan GTR. Now this reduces friction around the piston rings, and it improves your fuel consumption as well. So Nissan claims that this can average 18.4 kilometers per litre, and even though this has a rather small fuel tank at just 35 litres, its maximum range can be as much as 650 kilometers. In terms of numbers, this makes 100 PS, which is not much, I know, but what's more important is the torque. This car has 152 Newton meters of torque, and that is spread across from 2,400 RPM to 4,000 RPM. With this car CVT transmission, you'll be gliding along the peak torque throughout your whole entire drive, basically. Speaking of CVT, that's also brand new for the Almera. This here is a new version with something called D-step logic, and that mimics an automatic transmission as you accelerate through the gears. Now let's talk about pricing. We don't have the exact figures just yet because this car has not been launched in Malaysia just yet. The full launch will happen sometime in October, but until then we have an estimated pricing of between 80,000 to under 100,000 ringgit, 90+ thousand ringgit for the top spec version that you see here. There are going to be three variants available: the VL, the VLP for premium, and the VLT for technology. Basically, this is the top spec model. If you remember the old Almera, the range ended at VL. That was the top spec variant of the old car. So now this new one continues from there onwards. This here is the base variant, the Almera Turbo VL. So as you can see, it gets the standard 15-inch wheels, halogen headlamps, and inside you get fabric seats, a regular head unit, and even conventional meter panels. But at the same time, you also get keyless entry as standard across the entire range. As for safety, this car only gets 2 airbags, but electronic stability control, which wasn't even available in the old car, is now standard from even the bottom of the range. And I mentioned before, AEB, autonomous emergency braking, is available even on the base car. Fantastic, I cannot stress that enough. Moving on to the mid-range Almera VLP for premium, this adds on 16-inch alloy wheels on the outside, and on the inside it adds on full leather interior with a 2-tone dashboard, with an 8-inch touchscreen head unit with Apple CarPlay and the reverse camera as well. This also adds on a digital instrument cluster plus a bump up to 6 airbags. Now back to the range-topping Almera VLT for technology. This adds on LED headlamps with LED DRLs, plus even the fog lamps are LED here as well. At the back, there's also a fully blacked out rear bootlit spoiler. Inside, this car is also equipped with a full 360-degree camera, blind spot monitor, rear cross-traffic alert, and cruise control. Now let's go check out the interior. On the inside, Almera gets as big an upgrade as it does on the outside, because on a quick impressions, this is such a nice place to be. It feels good as well. This whole entire top half over here is covered in leather and it's sort of soft touch. It does give you the impression that this is a semi-premium car of sorts. There's also a new armrest over here and it's very nicely padded as well. I think for longer journeys, this is quite nice actually. Another big highlight is the head unit over here. This is a genuine Nissan Connect system and I think it looks good. Way better than the aftermarket looking ones you get in the Toyota Vios and of course the older generation Nissan Almeras. Best of all, this supports Apple CarPlay, which is the first for a car of this size. The instrument cluster is semi-digital with a proper analog dial on the right for the speedometer and a fully digital meter for the rev counter. The left screen, you can sort of customize it to show different information, but overall I think it looks pretty decent. It's not super high res, but considering this is a B segment sedan, it's still a nice premium touch to everything. The seats themselves are pretty decent as well. Nissan says this adopts the same zero gravity system as the bigger cars like the X-Trail and the older Tianas. But yeah, whatever marketing gimmick that means, it feels quite comfortable, I think. But the two-tone seats for the look, I think is going to be quite controversial because of course these are the sides that will get dirty faster than the rest of the seat. And to put them in a lighter tone where, you know, dirt will be more visible, I don't think that's the smartest idea. The previous Almera was very well known to have an extremely spacious rear quarters and this new one is the same as well. Legroom is absolutely massive for this size. Headroom, however, because this is a bit lower on the outside, can be a bit of a problem. I'm only 167 centimeters tall and if I sit up completely straight, my head can be just about grazing the roof over here. But I guess if you slouch down a little bit, it's not going to be a problem. And with the backrest having a very nice reclined angle, this wouldn't be a problem for most people. This being a much bigger car on the outside also brings about advantages on the inside too. The old Almera was very spacious in terms of leg room, but shoulder room was a bit tight, especially if you were to fit 3 people in the back. This new version has a much wider rear bench, although for the center passenger you're still sitting a little bit too high and the back end is not very comfortable because this is still designed for 2 rather than 3. But yeah, it's still more comfortable than the old car. In terms of amenities, you just get a single USB charging port over there and no rear aircon vents, but yeah, that's just the way it is. The boot is a decent 482 litres and you can fold the rear seats down for longer items. Underneath the boot floor is a space-saver spare tyre. Alright, let's now take a quick drive to test out the all-new 1 litre turbocharged engine in the Almera. Okay guys, here's a very quick first impressions drive of the 2020 Nissan Almera Turbo. So this is not going to be a full proper review of this car, it's just a first taster. But basically this is what you will be experiencing when you go test drive the car at the showrooms and whatnot. So as people say, first impressions count, right? So the first thing you'll notice in this car is that it does feel very, very spacious inside, and driving it, it's very easy. The steering wheel is very light, it's easy to maneuver around, and I do like that the steering wheel itself is very thin. The spokes are nice and thin, it's very easy to grip, very easy to maneuver around, and it does have a flat bottom steering wheel. I mean, that doesn't change the way you drive at all, obviously, but it does give like a sort of sporty and premium feel to everything, which is a nice thing, especially in B segment sedan class, right? I'm just going to go through things that I think you would want to know with this car. So number one, this has a 1 litre 3-cylinder engine, so you'd want to know whether it feels like a Perodua Viva, Perodua Asia, right? And for the most part, it doesn't at all. As soon as you start moving this car, it doesn't sound very rattly, the refinement is fine. You don't feel that much of a vibration from the engine at all, through the steering wheel, through the pedals. It's all quite refined. You won't really think that this is a 3-cylinder engine, but when you accelerate hard, there is a little bit of that. Yeah, there's a little bit of that 3-cylinder drone going on. But yeah, like I said, for the most part, you will not feel it. As for the engine, this is a 1 litre engine, right? So you may be thinking, yeah, is that too underpowered? Is that too small for a car like this? Absolutely not. This is more than powerful enough for a car like this. This is supposed to be a city car, but I think it should be fine even for quick highway drives as well. The engine makes 100 PS, which doesn't sound like much at all, but what's more important is the torque figure. This car has 152 Newton meters of torque. That is a lot more important in making you feel like this car is not underpowered at all. 152 Nm is a lot more than what the old Almera had, and it's also a bit more than the regular city 1.5 litre non-hybrid version that has 145. This has a little bit more, but more importantly, this is a turbocharged car, so the peak torque is delivered at a much lower RPM, 2400 RPM, all the way in a flat curve to 4000 RPM. So when you're accelerating, this having a CVT, of course, you are riding that peak torque all the way through the rev range. It does not feel slow at all, believe me that. As for the CVT, this has what Nissan calls the D-step logic. So as you accelerate along, the revs will climb and drop to mimic a traditional automatic transmission. So you won't get that much of a rubber band effect as do older CVTs. The older car had a 4-speed automatic, of course, not a CVT. So for those jumping from that old car to this car, you will feel like this feels, quite natural. It does not feel like a old school CVT at all. So next, let's have a brief session in terms of comfort. And this being a very, very short test drive, and this being Glenmarie, terrible roads all around. So that is pretty much an acid test for this car's suspension system. And you know what? I think it's great. As far as B-segment sedans go, this is one of the better ones out there. It absorbs bumps fairly well, although the bigger ones, this car will sort of like lurch and bump around a little bit, but that's more to do with this car's size. This is not an especially large car. The wheelbase is not that long, so going through over bumps, you will feel that this car is, it's a little bit bumpy on the extreme end. But having said that, for regular, normal drives, I think this will be very, very comfortable in the long run. Another thing to note is that this has a rather spacious footwell for a car like this. Regular B-segment sedans might have a narrower and tighter footwell, and this might be a little bit bulky and might block your knees as well. With this car, it's not really a problem. You can really push up your knees against the system, and this is it's not soft touch, it's not leather or anything. This is a B-segment car after all, but it is nice and smooth and it's quite comfortable. It's not going to be painful for your knees in the long run. I think that's pretty good. So that's pretty much it for our very, very quick first impressions drive of the Nissan Almera Turbo. Like I said, we'll have a full review later on. There we'll go into much deeper details on how this car drives and how it behaves on proper Malaysian roads. It's not bad at all. So do come over to the showrooms, test drive the car, let me know what you think as well. So that's it for our quick first impressions of the all-new 2020 Nissan Almera Turbo for the Malaysian market. It has a lot of things going for it. It looks fantastic on the outside, has a very spacious interior, it has a turbocharged engine, and as for safety, I cannot stress enough the importance of having AEB across the entire range. Well done, Nissan. Well done indeed. So over to you, what do you think of the new Nissan Almera? What do you think of this against the latest Honda City? Let me know in the comment section below, and thank you for watching. Stay safe, everyone.